Hello everyone, welcome back to the Perkins Engineering YouTube channel. We were very lucky to get a couple of bonus episodes at Bathurst earlier in the year when we were picking up our cars from the National Motor Racing Museum. So this was meant to be the first true episode of 2022, and we're delighted to be back in the workshop and looking forward to bringing you more and more videos for what you want to see, more of the comparisons between the three different supercars. We're going to catch up with LP, see what he's up to with his various projects. Also see if we can have a chat with him about the famous Perkins Engineering slide manifold and some of the early Holden engine stuff. So that'll be future episodes. But taking a quote from my favourite movie, The Days of Thunder, we've got ourselves a sponsor. Automation Solutions came to us and said we'd love to be involved in your videos. They're an Australian family business. They offer custom, cost-effective robot systems such as palletising, machine loading and folding. So jump on their website, automationsolutions.com.au, check out some of their previous projects and see what they're all about. The brief was pretty clear. Don't change what we're doing on the YouTube channel. Keep the content coming. Just get Automation Solutions in the background. So really grateful for them for coming on board to keep giving us the opportunity to make more and more content that you want to see. So thanks to everyone for watching our videos. And again, thanks to Automation Solutions for jumping on board. This episode, we're going to go straight back into our comparison series between the three generation supercars. And one of the more topical points in recent years is the front suspension and the front uprights. So we're going to check out the front suspension, the front uprights across the three different generation supercars. And let's start with the 1993 Bathurst winning Holden Commodore. Okay, so this is the left front of the 1993 Bathurst winning Holden Commodore VP. We did an extensive range of the build of the uprights on our Facebook page. So if you want to see some photos and build photos of the uprights themselves, jump on the Facebook and you'll find photos as well as our Instagram page. But this is probably the most road going of the three cars in terms of suspension. So we still utilize the Holden VK front strut knuckle, which we change the steering arm points down to here, and this uses a rear steer. So the steering rack mounts to the road car cross member, which is here. The road car cross member and the steering rack mounts there. And then our steering arms to get our bump steer and all the geometry right, we do modify the pickup point and we beef that up, but it's still the road knuckle. The upright gets beefed up with some fabrication as well. And then that forms the foundation for our front suspension. The front anti-roll bar uses the factory pickup points for the factory roll bar, which is here and here. So there's a mounting block that bolts through those factory roll bar mounts, which then the fixed blade connects to the lower control arm. And then to make the bar stiffer, you change this bolt and shorten the link to make it stiffer, or the longest hole out makes it softer. So the way you can change the roll bar beyond those couple of adjustments is the size of the roll bar tube. So obviously a thicker wall tube is a stiffer front sway bar, or a thinner wall becomes a softer sway bar. The lower control arm is a race car item for where the caster arm then mounts to this corner here, and then the lower pin, which is an offset pin, to give you the camber and fill out the track width and to maximize the race car sort of suspension settings. That all mounts there. These are originally a Harrop part, which various teams then made their own versions, but this angle of this bearing bucket needs to have some angle to match the angle of the pin, so that the spherical bearing isn't doing all of the work, but some of the work obviously. And then we use Bilstein shock absorbers, King springs, and then the top mount is up here using the factory pickup mounts, and that then gives you some camber adjustments underneath that top plate. You can see there's different holes which you can rotate where the top shocker ends up and can change the camber and the caster. This is predominantly the caster adjuster in where it picks up off the factory cross member, and you can change the caster by lengthening or shortening the caster arm. And then back on this side, the lower control arm is adjusted with a turnbuckle there which can be used to change the track width and also possibly give you some caster adjustment and some camber adjustment, and obviously calculated with all of your geometry and your bump steers and whatnot. We use the factory caliper mount, which then gets a aluminium dog bone, and that's how the brake caliper mounts to the car. 5 stud hubs with an aluminium wheel guide, and that is basically all there is to the front suspension on the VP Commodore. Okay, so we move over to the 2003 car, and it's worth pointing out just from the VP that McPherson strut style of suspension, that precise setup, other than the shock absorbers, remained the same until 2002 with the VX Commodore. So Perkins Engineering maintained that setup right through. And the other thing that was missing was the brake ducting on that car, but it was just a simple brake duct from the front bumper bar blowing into the inside of the rotors. And once those ducts are done, we will get a photo on Facebook so you can see how that worked. But straight away you'll see the big ducting on this car. So this is the first double wishbone front suspension car Perkins Engineering made. So vastly different to the McPherson strut. It uses massive chassis modifications here for the top arm. So the top suspension arm mounts on either side there. There's just a cable tie holding the caliper up, so I didn't have to disconnect the caliper, but I wanted to take the rotor off and show you exactly what the upright looks like. So it's a big billet aluminium piece here. It's got some insulation paint on it to try and keep the temperature out, stop the flex, and then the caliper mounts are here and here. So these are now a trailing caliper at the back, whereas the VP was a leading caliper in terms of where it's positioned on the car. And then the brake ducting, which is similar to what will be on the VP, except VP just comes to a knack. It doesn't have these racy carbon ducts here. Another difference, front steer. So the steering rack's mounted to the front of the cross member. This was a Perkins Engineering design for this particular style of car to allow us a bit more room under the cross member. And then in 2008, we started running the crossover exhaust system. So that enabled us to have a bit more room and cross the exhaust over, and that's why those cars sounded pretty racy in 2008. You'll notice the steering arm runs through the caster arm. Really interesting design this. It was tricky to get everything to fit, so we decided to make what they call a crab arm, and that then runs top and bottom of the steering arm. The caster arm adjustment is on the turnbuckle at the cross member, and that's your caster arm adjustment. The steering arm, this is actually an aluminium clevis, so that's designed to brake in a crash, not the entire upright. So that bolts on here with those bolts, and it worked really well. Typically, if you had a big crash and lost the steering, it would break this off and not damage the bulk of the upright. The sway bar is mounted at the back now, and certainly nothing to do with the factory mounting anymore. We fabricate these boxes in to hold the anti-roll bar mounting, and this is actually a crush box. This is just a steel box that is tacked together, and it's designed that once the sway bar, if it takes big bumps and lumps on the racetrack, it used to actually damage the chassis rail. So then this is designed to crush, protects the chassis, and we can replace those crush boxes. Cockpit anti-roll bar adjuster. So the cable running into the cockpit, changing the blade, so there's no requirement to change the holes for adjustment like the other car. And the drop link mounts again to the lower control arm, which is under there. So it's got more camber, more cast than the other one, but you see it's actually still a very similar design based on the original design. Olin shock absorbers, top mount. So this is all basically a Ford Falcon. This is what Project Blueprint was all about. Getting the Holdens to get the Falcon suspension, which was arguably better, more adjustability and whatnot. And this was the Perkins Engineering version number 1. And you can see the wheel speed sensor in there, shock absorber mount on the lower control arm. This part here is for suspension pot, a potentiometer, so you can measure the damper travel. and so on. So very different to the previous car in many ways, and you'll notice when we go over to the HRT car that it's very different again. And just before we go to the HRT cars, I'm starting to put this back together. You'll notice the center lock on these cars, not the 5-stud, but the 5 drive dogs. And I also failed to mention that the camber adjustment is in here. So to change the camber, you put different size shims in here, which then either leans this back or forward to give you positive or negative camber. But obviously we traditionally run lots of negatives, so it's either more or less negative camber. Let's go over to that HRT car now. Okay, now last but not least, the 2015 HRT car, and yeah, this is a lot different again. Bigger brake ducting to begin with, but you'll notice it's not billet aluminium. This is actually a fabricated bit of gear. Very impressive, very difficult to make, but when you get it right, it's absolutely fantastic. So you'll see also a little bit of brake ducting at the back now, so front and rear. There's the caliper mounts. I've just hung the caliper off the top wishbone like I did on the 2003 car. A really cool bit of kit. The top arm here, very similar sort of chassis modifications, but a lot more refined now in the car of the future, but still a double wishbone suspension. And you've got your camber adjustments here, so shim in and out to get more or less negative camber. The top clevis mount there. These things again are all designed to brake in crashes rather than damaging the full upright. You've got a wheel speed sensor here, big center lock, massive big lower control arm on these rockets. So you'll see that's quite a lot longer all the way up to the cross member, but again, similar sorts of designs, except the control arm, lower control arm and the caster arm on this car are actually one piece. So big bottom pin, big lower control arm, and you'll see the sway bar is a lot neater, a lot smaller, still mounted off the chassis rail with some modifications, adjustable blades that run through to the center and then back up through the car. But it runs through a little rocker system here. So instead of being sort of one-to-one with the wheel, you can adjust the digression and change the way the roll bar works sort of through the corner. A Sachs damper, similar top mount to the 2003 car. It's got a limiter for the wheel, so you'll notice at Bathurst in places when there's a lot of smoke pouring out of the wheel arch, that can sometimes be the wheel hitting up the top there. But yeah, very cool bit of kit. I'll just ease the caliper out of the way and you can see that sway bar set up, the drop link going to the rocker and then back down to the lower control arm there. So you can change the way those rockers work and how the sway bar works through the wheel travel. A king spring on the damper, the big brake ducting which we spoke about, and yeah, a lot more work and effort to go into this. These cars are back to rear steer. So it's a steering rack at the back of the cross member, comes to a clevis at the back of the upright, and again, a bolt-on aluminium clevis. Have a big crash or even sometimes just a small wheel crash, and that brakes instead of busting off this big upright. So yeah, really cool bit of kit. A lot different to what they run now, no doubt, because this is 2015 spec, but I've given you a really good understanding there of the 3 different versions of suspension. And yeah, this one's certainly the lot more man hours goes into not just the upright, but all the arms and getting it to be right. There's so much tunability these days, you need to have scope for adjustment in every which way. Well, that's it for this episode. I trust you enjoyed having a look at the front suspension on all the cars. Looking forward to bringing you more and more of those videos now we've got all the cars back in the workshop. Don't forget perkinsengineering.com.au, t-shirts, hats, stickers, and we've got some cool t-shirts and caps coming this year, new range, a couple of different t-shirts and a new cap. So looking forward to having them hopefully in the next couple of weeks or maybe another month or so. Big thanks to automationsolutions.com.au. Awesome to have a sponsor for our YouTube series. It enables us to do more videos, get some more microphones, improve the quality of everything. So Thanks for everyone tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Get on our Facebook and Instagram, Perkins Engineering. Always plenty of cool stuff going on there. And until next time, I look forward to bringing you another episode. Thanks for tuning in.